Okay,
What do you
here
want
we
to
are. We're
next?
back with Mike Gambino again. Gambino Landscape Lighting. And we're going to continue our talks on sales and design and his process on how he typically works through this with his customer base. This topic, we're going to go into addressing how should others approach this same thing. We've talked on the part one about how you do it. You have 35 years experience, but let's now address it, or what are your thoughts on how an entry level person might do it versus a mid-level versus an advanced level person? And we can just pick randomly, like an entry level, let's say 2 years or less of experience. A mid-level guy, maybe it's 3 to 6, 8 years, and then the advanced guy, according to these numbers, let's say maybe 10 years plus. And so maybe just address the same topic, but from that perspective, how should these guys do it without having the same level of experience that you might have?
Putting myself in that position, imagining if I was just starting my business now and I had no installs to my credit, I think the way I would approach it would be is, and pretty much this is the way that I approached it back in the day when I did start. First job I ever did was my parents' house, and that system is still operating with very little maintenance.
Wow.
It's 35 years old.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm incorrect about that. The first one I did was at my own house, and then the second one I did was in my parents' house. So what I would do is I would do some really, nice installs on, if I owned a property, on my own property, or friends, relatives, and they don't have to be permanent installs. I mean, you can do a mock-up, and the most important thing is to get photographs of it to show what you can do, but do it with your signature style. In other words, the way it's going to be when you're doing a normal install. So it's very important that you do a comprehensive job and photograph it and start to develop a portfolio. Because as I had mentioned in part one of this talk, the photography, the the my presentation is, and my marketing really is predicated on getting attention for what I do, and that's all been done through photography, and it's just gotten better and better over the years. I've honed it to the point where the photos representation is very, very, very close to what is actually out there. Um, so that is number one importance. Number two, what you want to do is when you start getting jobs, make sure you get people to review you. For me, it's been very difficult because on my level, I'm dealing with a lot of people who, the type of people I work with, hedge themselves in, meaning they put old hedges around the house, trees. They're very private people. They're very wealthy, and they want to remain anonymous. They don't want to put their name out there. So it's hard for me. Most of my clients are, they don't want to stick their neck out, it's not that they don't trust me. It's just that they don't want their name out there because they don't want to draw attention to their property, especially now the way things are with with theft and with crime being as it is. They're just, they would rather keep on the down low and not really bring any attention to their particular property. So that's another issue with photography. You're going to make sure that you make the clients understand that photos you're taking of their properties are going to be used for promotional purposes. You got to get their okay. You got to get them to sign off on it. I have it part of my agreement at this point. So you don't want to have an issue down the line where you've got a project where it's fantastic and they won't allow you to photograph it because, that's not going to do you any future good, especially if it's behind a guard gate or if it's behind high hedges and nobody could see
Yeah.
it, from the street. So that's something you want to make sure that you get the permission and get the signed permission. But wherever possible, get people to review you. Get 5-star reviews because people look at that. It makes a big, big difference. And I know that when I go to hire somebody, I look at that right away. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's some bad reviews here and there of some service providers. I've been very lucky. I think the first review I ever got was a bad review, and I've never gotten one ever since. and that was a situation where I don't even want to go into. The lady was crazy, so whatever. But like I said, I've never ever gotten a review like that ever again. So you want to make sure you get really stellar reviews. That's going to help you, and of course, you want to put together social media. You want to be very active with that. Um, I'm not sure, with social media, it gets your name out there. It gets people to understand, what you do and see photos of your work. It's a good, launching board for that. I don't know how much work I've exactly gotten for that. What I use it for mostly is for clients to take the photos that I shoot of their properties and you know right click on them and save them to their files. It makes it much easier because the files are so large that they really can't be sent through email. So it just becomes a way for me, for my clients to be able to save the
Oh,
photos.
that's a good idea. I
Yeah,
didn't think about
that's
that. Yeah.
like right now was a client that I'm posting pictures of a project that I just completed, and she wanted me to send all the photos, through the email, and it's impossible because they're just so big. You can't even send one because the files are so big, and you
Right.
don't want to downsize them. Facebook and Instagram does a very good job of downsizing without taking away the quality, without adding any grain or anything. The quality value is very good when you put it on the full screen.
Yeah.
So even by right clicking on them and keep saving them to their files, it's a much easier way to share files
Yeah.
than having to have any kind of third party service or burning them onto a thumb drive or
Yeah.
DVD, whatever, CD
Yeah.
CD-ROM or whatever it is. It just makes it much easier to do that. So
Good.
those are the things I would touch on, and then just get happy clients. I mean, your clients are going to be they're the most beyond besides your employees. Your clients are your clients are your number one absolute 100% number one important aspect of your business,
Yeah.
because without them, obviously, you don't have anything, and they're going to be your future. We get so much work from most of our work now is coming from clients we worked for before. They
Hmm.
are expanding their properties. They're doing, we're making changes in their properties, which means they need to make changes in the lighting, or they're going ahead and moving or buying another property somewhere else. It's been, it's been fantastic for us, and we've been doing this for so long. We have such a big client base that it's become such a large part of our business,
Yeah.
and it's easy to work for them. They know what they're going to expect. It just makes for a much easier install when the people know you already, and you pretty
Yeah.
much have your druthers. You give them a budget, and then you're able to do what you want to do, and then they love it, and everybody's happy. And of
Sure.
course, they're going to tell their friends and their family. Word of mouth is not going to happen right away, but it's going to become a very important part of your business. It should
Yeah.
become a very crucial part of your business if you're doing the right thing, and it has with us. It really has.
Right.
So those are the things I would focus on. Um,
Yeah.
just getting more projects out there, doing wraps on your vehicles, or at least some kind of professional logos. Have your vehicles clean all the time. Um, I'm fastidious about keeping work vehicles. Well, my own vehicles outside of work are that way too. I just love to see a vehicle that is, shiny and clean. To me, when I see that in someone I'm looking to hire, shows somebody who cares for their property, and someone who's going to care. If they're working for me, it's probably going to do the same thing for me. Someone
Yeah.
who's going to care. I mean, we do so many projects for people where literally I almost feel like we don't want to step from the planters if it's muddy onto the driveway, because they are so clean and so pristine that it's almost like working in a museum. Literally, it's really amazing. And I
Yeah.
try to, I try to run, my operation that way, where we keep everything clean. All the all the employees are uniformed. Everybody is professional, and the vehicles are clean and kept up. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
but that's going to come in time. Obviously, if you're starting out, you're going to have a very limited budget. So what you want to do is invest in product, though. You need to get product so you can obviously put lights out there, even if it's for mock-ups to take pictures, and wherever, if they're friends' homes or relatives, even if it's not a permanent install, just to be able to show what you're capable of. So
Right. Let's go back to like on the pricing because again, this is always a big barrier for guys. Typically, it's hard to charge a good price for yourself at when you're an entry level guy
Right,
specifically?
right.
Let's start there with the entry level again.
Okay.
What would you suggest for these guys on how they can approach that so then that way they can start building?
In the beginning, you may have to make a lot of sacrifices in regards to profit, because you're unproven, you don't have a track record, you haven't built up a referral base yet, you haven't put together a portfolio where you have something to
Yeah,
show for your work. You don't have the word of mouth going. So just to get started, you may have to work for very slim margins, which is acceptable. But once you get to a point where you're doing well, in order to grow the business, you must make a profit. You must make a healthy profit, because you're never going to be able to. If you ever have any issues where you have to go back to service that client, or if you have a problem that occurs unbeknownst beyond your control and you need to handle it, we've had situations, even though we've had our own, and it was on a project we worked with you on up in
oh yeah,
the
the
homeowners
silicone.
association.
Yeah,
We had a failure where the silicone failed on the lenses, and I lost thousands and thousands of dollars worth of LEDs. We came up and we handled it,
yeah, yeah,
and it's not the client's fault. Guess what? And who are you going to go after? The silicone manufacturer?
yeah,
Now, believe it or not, silicone. This is something back in the day, they never had an expiration date. If you look on the silicones now, they have expiration dates, and you better watch them if you're going to be using any kind of silicone,
yeah,
because obviously it sat around in our truck for too long, or we bought it and it was already expired, it was old, and it became gummy, and
yeah,
it almost washed away. It just literally washed away off the lenses. Water got in, and very expensive LED modules were lost. And
yeah,
without a wink, we handled it. We traveled, up to Mark and with the whole
yeah,
crew and all that, and we took care of it,
yeah,
because it's something you have to do if you want to be in business. And stuff happens beyond your control, you have to eat it. You have to take care of it. You can't just run away from it. And I was
yeah.
certainly never run away from a system that has my name on all the fixtures and the
Oh, sure.
LEDs themselves. I would never do that.
Yeah,
So it's important that you have money to be able to grow the business, to be able to handle any storms out there that you have to weather that you don't anticipate,
hmm,
um, and and realize that you're worth it. I mean, you
yeah,
to me, sometimes I'm asked, "Oh, do you know you?" I don't care what my competitors are charging. I know what I need to charge to make a profit, and what it's worth to me to do a project.
yeah,
It doesn't matter what my competition is selling for, because it's not the same. It's just not the
yeah,
same thing. It's not like
sure.
you're buying a product, where it's the same product, and you're in a competitive, marketplace where you have to meet their price or beat their price to make the sale. You're not getting the same thing. So
Yeah,
it's not even close to the same thing. So the way
sure.
you price price your systems are going to be dictated by the marketplace, obviously. If you're getting turned down on a regular basis, obviously you need to either do something different, or you need to lower your price. You need to feel that out, and that's going to take time. That
Yeah,
until get to a point where you're losing jobs because your price is too high. Then you need to, like I said, you need to adjust, either offer more value and keep your price the same, or even raise it,
yeah,
or lower it down to a point where you're now closing jobs.
yeah,
So, and it's all doable. It's not,
yeah,
it's really not, brain surgery. It's just a matter of trial and error.
yeah,
It's a matter of just knowing the marketplace, and our marketplace again is a very luxury market. But that doesn't mean that people are not looking for a value. I mean, they're
yeah,
not just going to throw you an empty check and say, "Oh, go at it, no problem, 250,000. Go ahead and do whatever you want to do," without
yeah,
without any sales involved in it, unless it's
yeah,
somebody who's worked for before. I've had situations like that, yeah, where they've given me a $250,000 check and say, "I trust you, do whatever you want," but that's somebody we worked for before.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just no one's going to give you carte blanche if
yeah,
you don't have a proven track record, or if you don't have a past relationship. Nothing is easy, but like they say, nothing, if it's worthwhile, it's nothing is going to be easy, that's for sure.
yeah.
It's going to require work.
Um, let's go back and talk. You'd mentioned before about signature style, your signature style.
Right.
How does somebody new or even a mid-level guy, how do they develop a signature style? What would you suggest?
I think it's important that you maintain consistency. So if you, let's say you light an oak tree a certain way, where you like to light the tree most of the volume of the tree. You don't want to light it like a stadium where it's just completely blown out,
Yeah,
but you want to use enough fixtures, where it's going to look a certain way. And we accomplish that by using a lot of low wattage or low lumen fixtures, but multiple fixtures. And a lot of times, the biggest objection we'll get is the people will say it sounds like too many fixtures, 250 fixtures. It sounds like I don't want Disneyland. And then you have
yeah,
to explain to them. There's a lot of education that goes into it. You have to explain to them this is not like the floodlights on the side yard of your house where you have two floodlights and it lights the whole side yard. What we're doing is for aesthetic, and in order, have you looked at the photos that I've done? Oh yeah, we love it. Okay, do you have any idea how many fixtures went into creating those scenes that you've seen? And they'll say no, because a lot of them you can't see. Most of the fixtures, and that's the whole idea, is to
right.
hide the source and and just see the effect. So people really have no idea, and it's understandable because they've never done it before. It may take 10, 12, 15, fixtures to light a large tree. And that could be lights that are either in the tree or under the tree. You need special lights to do the trunks, depending on how many angles it's being viewed from. And then that's the other thing too. As you know, when you're using multiple fixtures, you want to make sure they're well shielded. When they're well shielded, this cuts down on the spread of the light. So you're not going to have huge floods of light coming out of one particular fixture. They're going to be very limited as to how much that part of the tree that particular light can cover. The closer a light is to a subject, as you know, the brighter it's going to be, and the less spread there's going to be. The
Yep.
further away, and there's less chance of there being glare. The further away from the subject, the wider the spread, the more diffuse the light is going to be, and the more chance there's going to be of glare. So there's a trade-off with all of this, and
Yeah.
you need to determine where it's going to be primarily viewed from, where it's secondarily going to be viewed from, where people who are viewing it from the street, from inside the house, or from patio or from pool area, where they're going to be viewing it from to make sure that you're not going to be distracted by one particular light shining right in your face that ruins the whole thing. So there's a lot that goes, as you're designer extraordinaire. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It
Yeah.
just depends on where you're positioning the fixtures, um, where the amount of beam spread you're specifying, the intensity, the control of the beam spread is most important. And a lot of times it just takes a lot more than you think that it would take. So saying 15 fixtures for a tree, right away people are going to think, okay, they're equating that with a high cost. They, oh, I don't need that. I need only three. Okay, well, no. If you want it to look like this, you're not going to
Yeah.
achieve that same effect. And it's
Right.
going to look very spotty, and it's just not going to be full. It's not going to be what you're going to want. It's not going to be what we shown you in the photos. Let's put it that way. So
Sure.
yeah, it's always a struggle. Again, it's just a part of education. Um, again, as an industry as a whole, we really don't do that. As you know, the industry does a lot of educating to prospective purchasers of lighting for resale purposes. In other words, installers. I'm even going to call them designers, because a lot of people
Yeah.
who are putting lighting in are really not lighting designers. They're putting in lighting along with other projects, and the industry has been well known to want to sell as many products as they can to whoever, because it's highly competitive. There are a lot of manufacturers and distributors out there, many too many products for the amount of installs that are going on.
Yep.
So it's a race for whoever's going to get the sale. And a lot of times we overlook that as an industry. Unfortunately, it just seems to be growing every year. We discover, wow, there's another person
Yeah.
making lights or claiming they make lights and selling lights, reselling fixtures. When is that going to end?
Yeah.
It just seems to be an ongoing thing. And then now they're bringing in other trades to try and install. You got the people who do like stereos and alarm systems now getting involved with installs.
Yeah.
And electricians, in my opinion, not to say electricians are fantastic at what they do. They're very good at mechanically installing electric circuits, but and there's a few exceptions, obviously, but historically they've never been known to be the best designers
Sure.
of light.
Yeah.
Typically they're under the instruction of the interior designer when they're working inside the home in regards to the design, and they're just doing the actual install. So, and
Right.
again, not to disparage any electricians are out there. I'm sure there's a lot of good ones who are doing
Yeah.
this as well.
Right.
And same with landscapers. Just because know particular plants, and that doesn't automatically give you a license to know how to light them at night.
Sure.
Most of our jobs are replacing jobs that have been done by landscapers. So,
Mm-hmm. Yep. What would you say your signature is for Gambino? I mean, or do you have just one signature element that you
um,
are really proud of, or I mean, I know the fixture line, but in terms of like what you do design wise on projects, is there something different that how you approach it than others?
well, I think just a comprehensive, cohesive package is what we do. We like to obviously light plant material, walkways, architecture, everything that is lightable, but with very, very low levels of light. We're not just, again, casting light out haphazardly. Um, Cohesion and transitional lighting is very important to me, where I see a lot of jobs that are out there. You'll have one light on a tree, on each tree, straight up in in the front of the tree.
Yeah.
It's all one dimensional and just very flat and very boring. There's nothing that draws your attention. So we like to use multiple fixtures, again, of low wattage, but a comprehensive. If we're doing a front yard, especially because it's going to show, we want to light the walkways, the entryway. We want to light architectural features of the house, trees, shrubbery, secondary transitional plantings between, which are going to get less light than your primary, trees and shrubs.
Yeah.
And then a lot of what I've been doing recently is, you know, when LEDs first came out, and this is the beauty of LED, when they first came out, they had some color temperatures that were real questionable. That anybody, they would 5,000K, 4,000K. Installers were just purchasing these, and this is what was available. And a lot of the homeowner kits, that were being sold, and it was giving LED lighting a very bad name, because that type of color temperature should be used very, very sparingly. But recently, what I've been doing is, like, on olive trees, there's a podocarpus icy blue, it's called, which is like a blue uh, form of podocarpus. It's an
Yeah.
evergreen, but it's blue. Um, you have the blue agave. You've got blue ice plant. Several types of cool color plants do really, really respond really, really well to a cool color temperature uh,
Yeah.
light source. I'm not talking about a blue. I'm talking about a white colored light source.
Yeah.
4,000K, maybe 5,000K, which really emphasizes the color of what they actually are. And you'll
Make it
find
pop.
if you put like 2,700K on these particular subjects, it really uh, just doesn't look right. It looks almost like the plant material is like not healthy. So choosing the right color temperature where it's appropriate is really, really important. And this is something that, with LED, we've gotten into that, because when you had halogen, you didn't have the ability to
Mm-hmm.
change the color temperature,
Right.
which, at the time it was pretty much, it was 2,900K, 2,700K, depending on the manufacturer. And that was it. You didn't have a choice. So you couldn't really.
Colored lenses, filters that they
Colored
use,
lenses, right? But again, you're
green,
talking about
blue.
RG,
Yeah.
LGB, color changing, red, green, blue.
Yeah.
Which, okay, if you have a red plant, you want to put a red filter on it to accent. Let's say it's a red, maple or purpley plum or something like that. that, would be okay. But again, now you've got a trunk that looks very unnatural because the trunk now is red, where
Yeah.
trunks are not red.
Yeah.
So when you're using the off-white colors, pure white, or the warm colors of more amberish, in the lower 22, 24, 2700 Ks, 3000 K, which is more of a neutral, 4000 K, which is, again, a little bit more clear white, with, a little bit of the blues and greens mixed in. You got to be really careful about using them. And you also have to be very careful about what's surrounding. Let's say you're lighting a plant that is going to be flattered by a 4000K lamp.
Yeah.
There's always, you have to be careful of the spill of around it,
Yeah.
because you may be lighting something next to it with a 2700K, and now you're mixing colors. One part of the plant has 27K on it, one part is 4000, and it looks very, very odd. So
Yeah.
that's something that really needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. And that
Yep.
also brings me to the fact that a lot of people who are doing lighting are not even observing their own work. They're not even seeing it. They're only seeing it during daylight hours, which obviously, you can't tell you know, what the effect is. They're not
Sure.
visiting in the dark. So that's also a crucial aspect, is that, you know, I don't want to sound as though I'm bragging or anything like that, but very, very rarely we have to do any type of adjustment. It's very rare.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, the adjustments I'll make will be because the fixture needs to be, we need to do a few more fixtures here or there, or needs to back down a little on the intensity. But in regards to the adjustment angles of particular fixtures, it's very rare, because I've been doing
Yeah.
this for so long. Very rare
Right.
that I'll need to do that. And that's, again, while I'm visiting in the morning, we do it on the fly. That particular day, I can make the corrections. The next morning, I'm checking that out in the dark again. It's just become much more efficient for me to do it in the morning than having to wait. Like, especially at this time of year, it doesn't get dark till 8:30. We finish work, late afternoon. Got to hang around for 4 hours for it to get dark. That's not an
Yeah.
efficient use of my time. Um,
Sure.
Plus, I'm not getting home until 10 o'clock, and I got to get up early the next morning again. So morning, has been really, really good. The only downside to that is that when you're working in gated communities, you can't get in before 7 a.m. So those have to be done after dark. And again, that's all taken into consideration with the pricing of the job, and so forth. But these are
Sure.
just things you need to keep in mind,
Yeah.
when you're going out there. So a lot of things that come into play when you're doing a lighting project. It's not cut and dry, where you just by chance can throw lights out there and, okay, everything is 2700K, 3 watts, 60-degree beam angles, and just
Yeah.
whatever it is, it is.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to get random, results, that's what you do. If you want to fine tune and hone your projects, you're going to be using different beam spreads, different intensities, different color temperatures. But again,
Yeah.
making sure that you're doing it with taste in mind, and of course what the client is going to be looking for.
Well, and that could be another part of the whole process. Like when we talked about between entry level, mid level, and advanced level, each of these can be steps. Maybe in the beginning, they start off, they're very simplistic, just get familiar with what you're doing. And then when you get to a mid level, start now learning and experimenting, refining those design skills, like you say about color temperatures, beam angles, all
Right,
that,
right.
and so on up through advanced, because every step's a stage. What else might you add to close this part out here with between these three different levels of players? What?
Most of your experimenting you're going to want to do on a safe house, being your own house,
Yeah.
a relative, a friend. Um, you're going to learn a lot, again, even by photographing those jobs and seeing, where you could have done better. Being the best critic of your work, is really going to pay dividends. Um, Sometimes you can't see. It's interesting because I just posted a photo the other day, which you saw a lot of value in. What, to me, I really wasn't happy with the results, and you saw something different than I saw. And that's true. Sometimes I'll get like sometimes I'll post a picture, I think, wow, this is fantastic, and I don't get much reaction to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just the opposite, when I post a photo that I believe in my mind is not so great, I get like a, not always, but this happens occasionally.
Yeah.
So, when you have another set of eyes on something,
Yeah.
it's really enlightening. You're seeing things that you don't,
Yeah.
sometimes you just don't see yourself. And then there's also, I photograph all my jobs, but I also have another photographer who comes with me occasionally, and he sees things differently and sees angles, which I find very interesting. He picks angles of where he sets his camera up different than I would have thought of. So he's also helped my photography too, because I'm looking at my own lighting in different ways now, where I didn't do before. I was looking at it, from only one angle or two angles or three, and then he's choosing angles that are like, behind the pool, in the corner of the yard. He's
Yeah.
setting up, and then his result, I'm like, wow, that's really different. I didn't think about, it's not a primary viewing angle, but okay, there's a seat back here. Maybe at night somebody's sitting here and they're looking at it. We're
Yeah.
having a party or something. It may not be the most viewed area of the lighting, but wow, that really is an interesting aspect, and which I never
Yeah.
really thought of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it opens you up to different when you get feedback from others. It opens you up to new ideas and just new ways of thinking and new ways of accomplishing things. So,
Sure.
and again, that's important. I mean, I've seen people online do the same thing. They've raved about a particular project. I'm looking at, I'm thinking to myself, what am I missing? But you'll have a lot of people say, well, that's great. But I guess when you've been doing this for a while, which are the better projects, and which are not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but again, it's in the eye of the beholder. Everybody looks at
Yeah.
things a different way.
Yeah.
The older we get, the less our eyesight is not as great as it used to be, and the less light we perceive that we see. So
Yeah.
what's bright to somebody is dim to somebody else, and what's dim to
Yeah.
somebody else is bright to somebody. You go into a
Sure.
restaurant sometimes, you're like, wow, I can't even see the menu. It's, maybe the people next to you be like, wow, this is beautiful. This is romantic. This is perfect setting. So everybody has their own perception
Yeah.
of light.
You're right.
The,
Yeah.
the person who's paying for it is really the person that you have to cater to. We've
Yeah.
had situations where I've photographed a job where we've had to adjust the light levels where I thought, to me, were perfect. So I'd photographed the job because I thought, this is the best representation of my project. And then we've had to put dimmers on on the system, because this is what's going to happen sometimes. People are going from no light to comprehensive light in their yard. It takes a while for them to adjust. So most of the times when we go back to do maintenance, it's a very interesting thing. We'll find that now they have put the system back to its full brightness, which was me as the designer. That was the way I wanted it. But I don't
Yeah.
argue with people, because they see things a different way.
Yeah.
And, it's not a problem to me. In the beginning, they want to, get to adjust it the way they want it. But as time goes on, they start to see, wait a minute, let's amp it up a little bit. Now I'm becoming more, accustomed to it. So I see what he meant. And a lot of times,
Yeah.
like I said, we go back to do the maintenance on it. We see
Yeah.
the systems turn back up to full brightness, which is the way it was intended to be.
Right. I like how you say comprehensive light instead of
Yeah,
I, most people immediately go to a lot of light.
right.
So that's a great way of saying, comprehensive, it's well thought out, it's this and that, that's a good term.
Well, that's what'll happen a lot of times
Yeah.
when I do the photography initially in the morning while we're doing the build. Again, you don't think of the secondary areas, the transitional areas where you want softer light to transition one area to the other. That's where the photographs really show where you have stark darkness and areas that you need to adjust.
Yeah.
Um, Lawns could always be a problem. I mean, when they're out in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing, no way to get any kind of light whatsoever on them,
Hmm.
they become a dark hole. There's nothing you can do about that a lot of times. But when you have plant material, or you have things you may not even think about even lighting, you have a couple of milk cans out there, or wagon wheel, or whatever it is, the Western scene, or whatever's
Yeah.
out. You throw a little bit of light on there, and all of a sudden, without it, you cover it and you show the client, and you're like, wow, put that back, take your hand off that. That really makes sense now,
Yeah.
you know. But these are things again that you need to adjust, you need to see firsthand. But comprehensive meaning, when you pan across the scene, you're not seeing dark, big hot spots, or you're not seeing areas of darkness, dark holes, as we call them, as you know.
Right.
You're not seeing that in the composition. Your eye is flowing. It's going to if it's a front yard, it's going to the front door. The steps are properly illuminated, which should be just enough light just to see them and not
Yep.
a beacon. Um, you have a statue, you want a little more light in that to bring attention to it. You've got a beautiful oak tree in the corner or whatever tree it may be, that's really well lit up and down. Um, Nice shadow patterns on the ground. And then
Yeah.
if you have complementary soft architectural lighting, where I see a lot of photos I see online, I see a lot of, we've discussed this before. And I guess
Yeah.
unfortunately in other parts of the country, they're very limited as to the, landscape that they can illuminate. So
Right.
you'll notice they have very bright lights on the architecture. Um,
Yeah.
they're lighting everything, lighting the roof, lighting the dormers, lighting every aspect of the house because there's no surrounding landscape. We're very very fortunate where we have,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
yeah, we have a lot. We have an open palette basically on most
Hmm.
homes that we approach.
Yeah.
Um, this just being in this part of the country, so
Right.
it just becomes a more of a natural thing for us.
Yeah, and you talk about the being spotty and hot and dark and in
Right.
between, so it's all that fill light, the ambient light. That's what makes it feel unified and
Oh
flow
yeah,
through. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Some of the biggest mistakes I've seen are, again, hot spots on tree trunks, hot spots on certain sections of a tree where either the light source is too bright because it's too close to that section of the tree,
Hmm.
or they didn't use the proper beam spread, or they didn't use a lens, to diffuse it. And then there's like one section of the tree that's really hot, which doesn't go along with the rest.
Yeah.
Stuff like that needs to be worked out. And again, the only way you can do it is to actually see it in the dark.
Yeah.
Most clients won't even notice it. But as a
Sure.
professional, as a designer, if you want to get better, you have to notice those things. When you're doing,
Let I'm sorry. Let's do this because this is actually our next question. I wanted to ask you about some of
okay,
these problems that you're seeing. So this is a whole new topic.
all
Let's
right,
go ahead and end this conversation here. And thank you for your time again. And then we'll be coming up again with part 3 as the next one.
sounds good.